Hi, I am Mrs. Jardine, and I am going to talk briefly about 4.1, which talks about growth, population growth. So there's two different types of population growth. There's exponential, and exponential is where it grows with unlimited resources. So basically, it just grows and grows and grows and grows and grows, and it doesn't stop. It keeps growing consistently, and it does not stop. So if this right here is exponential, it's called the J curve because it just does that. It doesn't stop. And so obviously things can't grow exponentially forever because eventually they'll run out of resources. So then that goes into the next one. So J curve right there. J curve. See it? J curve. Exponential. Then what happens is it runs out of resources, it runs out of space, whatever, and then it stops. See right here, it says slow growth. It reaches its carrying capacity, which we will talk about. So what's carrying capacity? It's the total number of organisms, species, whatever, total number of organisms that a specific area an environment can support. And so the carrying capacity, so what will happen is you have this J curve, right? J curve. Runs out of resources. Okay? So then here, I'm going to draw it on here. Let's do, sure, we'll do red. So we have our graph. Okay. Should we change the color? Let's do purple. J curve. Unlimited resources, that's exponential growth, whatever. Well, then you run out of resources. And then all of a sudden you're like, and then you go, because what happens is you get too low, too high, too low, too high. So like this one, and then what I just reached there is the carrying capacity. So you just draw a line in the average between it. It's supposed to be a straight line. I'm obviously not the greatest at a straight line. So what happened is, I want to get my arrow back. Okay, well, right here. So then the population got too high, and a bunch of them died out because there wasn't enough food. So then they go below, and then they're like, oh, I guess we can have some more of those living there. Whether you talk about fruit flies or deer or whatever, they grow again. Oop, ran out of food again, and go down. And so obviously nature can't be a perfectly straight line. So it goes above and below this thing called this carrying capacity. So if we go back, you can see here they showed you the carrying capacity and says stable equilibrium. Total number of species a specific area can support. That's the carrying capacity. So logistic growth is that. That occurs when a population growth slows or stops following a period of exponential growth. So logistic growth is called the S curve because it kind of looks like an S here. So this whole thing would be logistic growth. Because what happens is resources become less available because, like I just told you like 8 times, becomes less available, the population slows or stops. What happens. So if there gets to be too many species, then disease could happen because there's too many living in the area. So all this poop, and then they eat it, and they lay in it because there isn't any room, right? So then they die off. Or so disease, competition, there isn't enough food, so they all compete with each other. Okay, so then they die off. They could start war or fighting and things like that. So that is logistic growth. So your book talks about something called life history patterns. And so a rapid life history pattern is an organism that has a really small body size. They mature really, really quickly because they're so small that they reach their reproductive age very fast. Since they reach their reproductive age very fast, they reproduce very early, and they have a short lifespan. So examples would be fruit flies. Have you ever had fruit flies in your kitchen because somebody leaves a rotting apple in their lunch pail that they hang up on the wall, and then the lunch pail's open and they don't tell you, and all of a sudden you have a million fruit flies in your kitchen and you can't figure out where they came from, and then you find a rotten apple. Oh wait, no, that just happens to me and my children. Yay! Anyways, you can't get rid of them because they keep laying eggs like in your drain or whatever. So you have to set like fruit fly traps and stuff. And the reason why is because they die. By the time you kill them, they'd already laid their eggs. They don't live very long. They have a very rapid life history pattern. Bacteria is an example of that as well. A slow life history pattern would be the large species, those that take forever to grow and to get to reproductive age. Some sharks take 25 years before they can reproduce. Elephants, bears, whales, humans, all of those. So they're very large species and they take a long time to reproduce. All right, density independent limiting factors, they affect the population regardless of the size. So it doesn't matter if the population is big or small or whatever, they're going to affect it the same way. So like a hurricane, they are not like, oh, I can only go here because there's a large population. A hurricane's going to go wherever. Same with like a tornado or like damming of rivers could affect a population. Tsunamis, severe thunderstorms, things like that. So anytime it's a limiting factor, it causes the population size to go down. Because if I say, hey, I'm going to limit the number of cookies you get to eat today, then what does that mean? That means that you don't get to eat as many as you want. You only get 2 or whatever, however many I say. I limited it. So a density independent limiting factor, it's independent of how dense the population is. That's where that gets it from. But it causes the population to go down. Density dependent limiting factors, how they act is dependent upon how dense the population is. So like the larger the population, the more it's going to affect it. Examples of that are like disease. If the population is really large, they usually are really close together, and then disease will affect like all of them. If the population is really large, then they're going to have competition, and that's going to cause the population to go down because there's not going to be enough resources. Population is really large, then they're going to have predation, like things like that. So predation, competition, disease, parasitism, famine, things like that are going to be examples of density dependent because it's dependent upon the population size. So again, causes the population to go down. Density independent also causes the population to go down. That's things like natural disasters. All right, so these are examples. Limits to population, predation, density dependent, or density independent. Dependent, very good. Competition, what would that be? Density dependent, good. Overcrowding, also density dependent. So all of these cause the population to go down, and they're all density dependent. I'd watch that video, it's great. He's awesome. And that's all for 4.1. It's a pretty short section. Let me know if you have questions.